You cannot change anyone, but you can be the reason someone changes. Roy T. Bennett. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamiza Ali. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight's topic is the progress report on programs and services at the Ministry of Human Services. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh.
Thank you very much, Shamila, and welcome to our viewers.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Our panelists tonight are Professor Muniram Budu and
Hello,
Professor.
Shamila.
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Good evening. And Professor Mahindra Hariraj.
Good evening, everybody.
Good night. Our guest tonight is the Minister of Human Services and Social Security, the Honorable Dr. Vindyhya Persaud. Welcome,
good evening
everyone.
to you,
Dr. Tara.
and good evening to everyone.
Pleasure having you here this evening.
Thank you.
Dr. Tara, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shamisa. Welcome, Honorable Minister. I know we have been trying to get you a long time, and you have been exceptionally busy like most of the other ministers, so we understand that. But we are very happy to have you today. And I don't know if you ever met Professor Budu before, but he's in the engineering field. He's a civil engineer by profession, and Professor Mahi, and he's in the accounting and economics area. But they both have deep interest in the work of your ministry, as I myself do. Now, before I start, the Guyana Dialogue would like to express our deepest condolences to Minister Ashley Singh on the passing of his mother. So, all that we can say that you got to keep the faith. This is a part all of us have to go through one day, and I don't know what else you can say when someone loses somebody so close to you. I think words are inadequate to express emotions at that time. Anyway, back, Honorable Minister, I know you have a very, very difficult ministry to run. And if you can please highlight, well, your main mission, and then we can continue to ask questions after then. Because I don't think that many people have a clear idea, or they know that you're responsible, for example, like old age pension and domestic violence, just a few areas. So it'd be great if you can expand, elaborate on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tara Singh, and good evening to everyone who is looking at tonight's program. Thank you to the panel, to yourself and Ms. Ali for having me on this evening's program. And I'd like to join you in expressing heartfelt condolences to the family of Dr. Ashley Singh. I've known his mom from my birth, and my heart goes out to the entire family. And I will convey your condolences to him and family as well. Thank you very much for that. The Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is an expansive ministry and caters for just about everyone in Guyana and directly for the most vulnerable populations and at-risk populations. And the Ministry of Human Services is perhaps best known for its pension program. That is true. People tend to mix up the types of pension. There is the NIS pension and the old age pension. This ministry is specifically responsible for the old age pension, making it one of the largest social assistance programs in the country. And we are also responsible for the public assistance program, which has 3 divisions: economic, medical, and permanent disability type assistances. In addition to that, we also work with gender in terms of the Gender Affairs Bureau, which is responsible for defining and outlining the roles and responsibilities of gender, and also responsible for working directly with men and women. We also have a unit called the Sexual Offenses and Domestic Violence Policy Unit, but it's so much more than that. We deal with gender based violence in its entirety, and not just the policy. We also have an operational side to that unit. And since I came here as minister, the very, very well known number by now, the 914 hotline service. Also, this ministry is responsible in large measure to respond to trafficking in persons. There are two ministries that directly respond as it relates to trafficking in persons as defined by our counter trafficking in persons legislation, namely the Ministry of Human Services and the Ministry of Home Affairs. And so we are responsible for the support services to both migrants and persons who have been trafficked. Also, the ministry works through the difficult circumstance unit and caters for a large number of persons, whether it's to do with persons who have had crises, whether it's fire or any other kind of emergent situation. We also have very extensive program catering for persons with disabilities, and that would have recently led us to establish a learning lab where training continues under this ministry. We also would have started the eye care program, EYE that is, and we are responsible too for children across the nation, not in the education setting, but outside of the education setting. We have another program, and under that program is the Child Care and Protection Agency, which deals with all issues relating to children. And we deal with adoption, both local and international adoptions. We also deal with foster care and early childhood and development. I think I might spend the rest of the program telling you what this ministry does, but wrap it up and say that we have another huge area where we deal with the empowerment of women. And that is, again, the lesser known before I came, but now the very well known Guyana Women's Leadership Institute, and the even better known flagship program, the WIN program. So I think there are lots of things you can ask me, and I'll be very happy to share everything within my power to share with you. And I'm happy for this opportunity to share too what the ministry does. I hope that gives you in a nutshell what we do.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I I noticed. I think I read in the papers last week the Attorney General has issued a request for proposal to do a study into via domestic violence, referring specifically to spousal murders, wife murders, as is popularly known in Guyana. Um, I don't know if you are aware. Well, you should be aware of that. But what's your relationship on this project with the AG Chambers?
So there is a ministerial task force chaired by me that deals with sexual offenses, which will include cases of domestic violence. In that task force, this was discussed, and we will be collaborating on that. This ministry is responsible, as I mentioned, in large measure for gender based violence. The original piece of legislation, the one that we have now, is the Domestic Violence Act. We are working to craft and to have this act replaced by the family violence bill, which will become an act when we pass that in parliament. And what that seeks to do is have more extended coverage when it comes to catering for persons who are affected by gender based violence. And I make that distinction because the Domestic Violence Act deals with what the Attorney General would have mentioned, that would be interpersonal violence, spousal violence, partner type violence. But the Family Violence Act, as it is being crafted, speaks to more relations within the larger or extended family. The Guyana's response through the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is a very comprehensive one. In 2020, when the government came into office and when I became minister, we signed an agreement with the EU, this European Union, and the United Nations. And that was to do with the Spotlight Initiative, which will conclude at the end of this year. That program, funded by the European Union and implemented by the United Nations and the agencies falling under that, would have worked extensively with the ministry to develop a comprehensive response, adding to what the ministry has been doing. So we would have looked at the issue of reporting. There are six pillars. So we would look at the issue of reporting, and we have two reporting mechanisms that hitherto never existed, and that is the 24-hour domestic violence hotline, which is 914. It's toll free, it's accessible, and that is manned, as the name suggests, 24 hours. We have an entire unit dedicated to that. From that reporting point, one of the entry points in the referral pathway, which we have crafted, people can have immediate action, or if the situation is not an acute one, we will offer other services. Immediate action includes things like if something is happening right at the point, we will actually call the Guyana Police Force. We have a mechanism in place for that. They will respond, and then the entire system kicks into place. This will involve things like counseling. We have something called a safe voucher, where we give women affected by domestic violence, gender based violence, a voucher to tide them over if they're leaving their home, they need some help. We have also a hamper or a safety bag, if I want to put it like that, where those persons have a survival kit. We also have a program called the Survivor Advocate Program, which is also brand new. And this is a program where persons experiencing gender based violence can have someone directly assigned to them, where the assignment starts from the time of reporting and goes all the way to the conclusion, if that conclusion even involves the court, to complement the legal aid program, which the government of Guyana supports by a hefty subvention. From this ministry, we signed an MOU with the Guyana Bar Association, which allowed us to start the Legal Pro Bono Initiative, which provides for 500 cases, domestic violence cases, specifically to be dealt with by lawyers or attorneys from the Guyana Bar Association at no cost to the person. We're also, in tandem with that, working towards expanding our cache of shelters. And so in the last 2 years, we would have seen more shelters, adding to what we would have already been subsidizing through public-private partnership and state-owned shelters. And we are also working with the police. We have trained 1,800 members of the Guyana Police Force under the COP Squad initiative with technical assistance from the United Nations Population Fund. We're also working to involve and integrate the community in our response to gender based violence. And we have had the Community Advocate Network program spinning out into various communities across the country. We have touched every region with this program, and it's something that we will continue to do. And this involves us not only training people who have volunteered from the community, but now moving to the next stage of the program where we will assign them responsibilities. Some people have various capabilities, which may even include temporary shelter. We also have another program, and this is the Foundations program. This is in tandem with UN Women, and this is focused on young people 13 to 25. We've started training. We've targeted so far region number 6, number 7, and we are fanning out as the program continues. We're also looking at hinterland shelters, and those are things that will emerge soon. And in terms of a one-stop response, there's something called essential services package, which allows us to develop and to provide services under one roof. So we're working on 2 Hope and Justice Centers. This is a collaboration between this ministry and the Legal Affairs Ministry. It's funded by the Impact Justice Program, and the concept and content comes from the Human Services Ministry, where someone can go to this one place and have all the services right there in one building. That is our response to them and our supporting mechanism to them, whether it's reporting, counseling, legal services, medical services, all of those will fall under one roof. We have two buildings that have started. One is nearing completion in Region 4, the other in Region 3. And we are working on one in Region 1 and one in Region 7. So those will be the pilot projects for gender based violence. In addition to that, we've used IT and we have created an app, and this is called the iMatter app. This app gives all the resources on one platform, and there is also a panic button. So when you download that app on your smartphone, you can click on the 914 panic button and be connected to the 914 hotline. Currently, we are working on the remote rural services, the mobile services to offer what we are offering in the one-stop shop model to the wider community, focusing on hinterland, rural, and remote communities. We've also been training a number of persons, collaborating with a number of agencies so that we can have a more extended response to gender-based violence. We have also tried to amplify a lot of the services we are offering, but a lot of it has to do with behavioral change. A lot of it has to do with buy-in from community. A lot of it has to do with everybody getting involved so that people will understand that eyes are on them. This is not something that they should be doing. We've also had a series of engagements. In fact, later on in the year, there will be a conference bringing together my ministerial counterparts so that we can share the Guyana model that we have developed. It is considered under the Spotlight Initiative one of the foremost models in the region. So that's some of what we are working on. And as you know, even though we're doing all of this, I am particularly conscious that gender based violence or domestic violence is still happening every day. So it is not to say that this has fixed everything and will fix everything. This is our response. We will keep working on it, but much more has to happen in homes and schools across the country so that we let people know that violence is not the answer. Conflict resolution is necessary. So, to target that, we've been training people in conflict resolution and anger management. We've been doing that in community settings and in a number of other settings. We've been working with men in particular to look at those areas, but also working with women. We also understand the point that domestic violence or gender based violence would not only affect women, it affects men as well. We've seen two cases in the media. So our support, our response is the same, whether you're male or female. We will respond equally to you. We've worked also with the LGBTQIA community, training them and engaging and supporting them. I know I've shared a mouthful, so I'm ready for any questions you may have.
Before I pass you on to Professor Boudou, do you carry out any in-house study into the causes of domestic violence, or
So
have you asked any NGO to do that on your behalf?
we have had the UN do a study, and it was published about a year and a half ago. And what we have found is we tend to have more qualitative type studies. We are working to have more quantitative type studies. And we are working also to look, for example, the one you alluded to earlier on the program, and other studies to help us to be more definite as to the triggers, the causative factors. But the reality is, as we do all of these studies, we are very, very cognizant of the fact that gender based violence, domestic violence would be considered endemic in our country because it's been there for a long time. It's been there for a long time. And to say that we could quickly fix this is to really be deluding ourselves.
Right,
But
right.
raising the awareness, raising the consciousness, and providing solutions and strategic directions. We're working on a strategic policy to guide the national program. So a lot of things are happening concurrently because, as you would recognize, we've only been in government from 2020. So all
Mm,
the work that I've shared with you would have happened from 2020 to current date. And if we give you some statistics, we have had over 7,000 calls to the 914 hotline. That would just tell you what has been happening, what is being done when before there was no real way of reporting. And that's just this year, the first half of this year. And of that, 399 of them for the first half were domestic violence related, 375 were child related. And, whether it's an adult, a child, an elder, however we take all the reports.
Okay, thank you. Now the only reason why I asked you that I've spoken to a few people who have worked in this area, and they said one of the biggest challenges to women when they are being abused by their husband is economic necessity because they want to go but they can't go because they study about maintenance for the children, and that keeps them, and many of them don't even report. So there could be a very high underreporting of domestic violence because of the economic imperative.
So that's very valid. And because I'm fully aware of that, the WIN program came into being. That's the Women's Innovation Investment Network. This is a program that targeted women directly. And what we did, what I specifically ensured is there was no prerequisites for entry into this program. This program is a free program. It's a hybrid model program. So women could be trained in technical vocational areas online or in person. To date, we have had over 20, we have had over 11,000 persons trained. We have had 25,000 persons registered from when we started this program in 2021. And you're probably saying, well, it's just a training program. It's not, because this is open to women from the age of 16 with no upward ceiling, any age, because I'm very cognizant of exactly what you said. No, we have had full classes with persons who are experiencing or would have experienced domestic violence. And because of that, I looked at it holistically. So we have the training program. When they've completed their training in very specific areas where we are sure they will either have employment or move into entrepreneurship, we have two things. We have the business clinics where we train them on how to start business. So we have business literacy programs. We have the female business incubator where they can have continued support after that initial onset of training. And we would have seen women gravitate to this program like you cannot believe it. If I'm telling you 11,000 persons we have trained to date, that's only 44.4% of the numbers of women who would have applied. Now, out of that target, we have worked with women to get them employed or move them into entrepreneurship. And we have utilized the fact that their certificate training, whether it's patient care, child care, graphic design, garment construction, whatever it is they were trained in, they have the opportunity to benefit from business stimulus grants, which we would have distributed to women who would have been able to meet our criteria in conjunction with the World Food Program. We see them register their business, we work with them, we bring all the stakeholders in the room to the table, to the female, and we offer our support to get them into entrepreneurship. Then, if we looked at our initial numbers of 4,000 women who were trained, 45% of them went into entrepreneurship, 28% of them got employed, and we are currently monitoring those persons who are there and tracing and tracking those persons who've been trained, because we want to assess the impact of the program that we have done. The Guyana Small Business Bureau is also open to those women, and there are other programs that they can access. Now, what this government has done is created a number of free programs. The Board of Industrial Training has unconventional training for women, and women have gravitated from anything to machine repairs, engine repairs, boat building, you name it, they're doing it. We had a very good program in collaboration with the Guyana Energy Authority and the IDB, where we trained close to 90 women in solar voltaic training. And this is part of what we're doing for greener, cleaner sources of energy. So the training I speak to you of would have been given in every single region of this country. And we continue to do that. We have increased our targets. We know that this is not something, as I said, that will be a quick fix, but this is work in progress, solid work in progress. And how have I measured? Well, we started with another app called the Win app, and that's a free platform for women to advertise their business. This app would have on it right now, if you checked, over 800 women owned businesses. We have something called the We Lift program, which is an annual showcase of female owned businesses. And I'll tell you how that moved. The first year it was 75, the second year it was 150, and the third year, this year, was over 200 female owned businesses that we saw at that exposition, only in Region 4, excluding the other regions that we went to, which would be Region 10, Region 2, and we are moving further afield. But the point I'm trying to make is what you said is driving the way this program is rolled out, where we're looking at it in its entirety from our response to gender based violence and to our empowerment of women. We're also working to have life coaching next year. And we're also working to have more counseling and therapeutic sessions offered to women. I know that many women would want to come on this program, and we're looking at ways in which we can expand this opportunity for women.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive, and you know, and, I'm sure that our viewers will learn quite a lot, including the panelists here. Professor Boudou, over to the minister.
Minister, um, you mentioned that domestic violence is endemic in Guyana, and I think this would be also true of poverty. I know Dr. Tara Singh has written extensively on poverty and poverty reduction in Guyana. Right? I just saw the World Bank data today that say that poverty in Guyana is 48%. Is this data correct? And if so, what is your government doing about this? And what do you expect this figure to be, say, in 2025?
I think the government has been consistently working on ways in which to move people from the poverty level. All of our programs are geared towards that. In the aftermath of COVID, government came in. We were in government moving towards the aftermath of COVID. And that was a time when government supported every household with cash grants. Government supported farmers with cash grants. Government supported vulnerable populations with cash grants, understanding the need to cushion shocks. Government has also removed taxation, significant taxation from the population in Guyana, reversing what was there under the previous government. Government has done a number of increases to various levels of the population. Government has also looked at the income tax threshold. Government has looked at the banking system so that there is more responsive banking, whether it's housing, whether it's giving people access to loans when it comes to business startups. Government has also looked at mortgages. So government cannot immediately do all the things that we would want them to do at the onset, or in the time frame that anybody, including myself, would want it to happen. But government has been working in every sector to develop sectors so that there is more employment opportunity. In agriculture, there are more women in agriculture now than ever. There is the Shade House Project, there is the Youth Project, there is a diversification project. In housing, more women, in the study that was recently done in housing, more women own their own houses. I shared extensively from my end what has been happening when we look at direct empowerment of women. So it will not be a band-aid or a plaster, but it will be continued movement in that direction to ensure that in the years ahead, we see that figure reduce in the sense of there's less poverty, less and less persons. We are also conscious of what's happening globally. We have been in a war crisis. We have been in a crisis where there was global inflation. And we are looking at how it impacts on Guyana, and acknowledging that there is not only that, but there is climate change. There are other areas that impact on how our country produces our yields when it comes to agriculture. Guyana is leading on food security in the Caribbean, looking at it regionally, looking at it as CARICOM to ensure that food is something that is not in shortage in our country because that's a basic necessity. We're also looking at our healthcare system so people can have freer options in an equally accessed manner, in the sense that if we are able to provide healthcare across the length and breadth of country, then access will become a better possibility for women. We're also looking at information technology, because if we look at the indigenous community or the Amerindian community, and we look at the females in our country and even globally, you're looking at narrowing that IT gap. So again, there can be more access to education, access to employment, access to any of the e-governance services or anything that's out there. We're looking at going into hinterland communities. The low carbon development strategy is one such strategy that is directly impacting on hinterland communities. You would have seen the disbursement to various villages, all the villages. We just had the National Tushao Council, and you would have seen that all the villages not only have heard about financing for their villages, but they have benefited from that, and they are now to determine how that will be utilized. So there are various streams that would be working towards the poverty reduction that has started and is happening in Guyana. So I think it's a good beginning, and I would like everybody else in government, to see it spiral upwards.
Mhm. Now, what is the status of digitization in your ministry?
Right. So I inherited not a very good state, in fact. So right now there is an IDB project that is working for the ministry, where we are looking at the pension and the public assistance databases, to start with that, where we are developing separate modules to have digital databases and also client interfaces to be more responsive and less reactive. When I came into government, we looked at the number of pensioners, and from then to now, we have had a physically verified pension list. This year, we are expecting at least 73,000 pensioners. Now, it seems to be a large jump, but we're also looking at what government has also done, making sure that people have their source documents, because the law provides for people to have source documents before they can even get their pension. So more and more pensioners are getting their source documents so that they can benefit from their entitlement, which is an old age pension that is not means tested. So that is one database. We're also looking at networking the databases with other databases that exist in the ministry. For example, the gender-based violence case management database. This requires us to not only deal with everything, whether pension, gender-based violence, or empowerment, centrally, but to take it out to the regional system. So we are in the process. By the end of next year, we should have every region equipped with computers, tablets, laptops, so that they can provide the same service in a digital way that we provide centrally, so that they can be networking, so that they can be one platform where information is stored and where information is accessed from, and so that we can get to the stage where I'm hoping very soon that pensioners utilize more of the IT type services that we offer, like MMG, like the direct bank deposit. And we are moving to the point where pensioners, people who have permanent disabilities, people who have public assistance needs, they can go online, they can enter all their information, and we can process them as simple as that. So it is in the works. It was not there before in that measure that I'm telling you. And we are trying to do that with every database that exists, or where we don't have databases, to build those databases.
No, but are these databases and the application that you mentioned, right, are these part of a central e-government services, or is it a standalone in your ministry?
Well, this is work that was started and will fall into place when we have the central e-governance model. We have seen the president, the vice president, and various ministers speak about the EID, speak about e-governance, and speak about having that one identifying card that will allow all the sectors that are required to fall into place. So this is just one sector working towards that bigger picture.
Yeah. All right. I have one last question for you. I'll pass you on to Professor Anshraj. Now, another data I got from the World Bank is about Human Capital Index. And for our viewers, this is a measure of the amount of human capital that is a child born today in Guyana can expect to attain by the age of 18. And that value is zero point 0.5, which is lower than the Latin American and Caribbean countries. What was strange about this data, I noticed that this data was constant since 2017. So you think that data is correct? If not, what is being done about this?
I think that data needs to be looked at because from 2017 to now, you have had a change in government, and the
Mhm.
government has significantly invested in the country. So I think that data in simple could be relooked at and, if
Mm.
necessary, revised. So I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Uh, Professor Mahin,
Good night,
over to
everybody.
you.
Good evening, Minister Vindy Persaud. Your
Good
ministry
evening.
is very comprehensive, and you have shared so much across a comprehensive platform that you have set up since you came into government. But just to touch on one important fact that Professor Buru have shared, the World Bank data would have incorporated the 5 years of the APNU government. So
Correct.
one cannot ignore that fact.
Correct.
All right. So Minister, you spoke about human trafficking. I know Guyana is on the verge of attracting new talent, and there's an influx of folks across the world coming to Guyana. How is your ministry working specifically to address an influx of new individuals from all walks of life in combination with other ministries such as the Ministry of Public Security, etc.? As you know, there is a welcoming sort of presence that we want talent and we want new people, but how is it that you're documenting, also, tracking, or what measures specifically are being put in place to combat foreigners that's coming and maybe attributing to this statistic?
So thank you for that. There's several categories to what you refer to. You have people coming in as visitors, tourists legally. You have migrants who are coming, and you have people who are trafficked. So if I go back to the original part of your question, trafficking in persons in Guyana has been taken very, very seriously, and that falls directly under the purview of this ministry. And we are collaborating by law, and that would be with the Ministry of Home Affairs. We also work very closely with the Ministry of Governance and Foreign Affairs and the Prime Minister's office, and by extension, all other ministries, including the regional system. Tracking would be done at the level of the Ministry of Home Affairs, as that falls there. The law provides for some aspects of trafficking to be dealt with by Home Affairs and some by this ministry. We co chair a task force which meets that has a number of other agencies within that task force that is responsible for the development of the National Action Plan. We also are working currently on the SOPs that will guide the collaboration or the work across agencies, and every ministry would have its specific SOPs to guide how they work. In terms of services from the ministry, we provide psychosocial support to those persons who require it, whether they fall under the trafficking in persons definition or they fall under the migrant definition. And that is also complemented by other agencies. What we have seen of significance would have been Guyana having 7 years of a tier 1 rank. And this is significant because it means that there's recognition of the efforts that we have been expending when it comes to the various tiers that we have to address. Training of persons, people along the borders who deal with this to ensure there's less porous borders. And also, there is the response that is humanitarian and that takes into account the rights of people who are trafficked. Also, recognition of trafficking, what it is, who is trafficked, and how to report it. That is some work we have been doing at this ministry. We also have a 24-hour Spanish hotline in addition to our English hotline for reporting of trafficking. We have seen also a number of police officers, people in the joint forces, I should say, and a number of persons across agencies being trained to recognize trafficking, to respond to trafficking. This ministry will also go with the Guyana Police Force on raids across the country to respond to reports of trafficking wherever it exists. We have also been able to help those who are victims of trafficking to return to some level of normalcy and to give them support, whether it's employment, shelter, food. We provide that at this ministry. And in addition to all of that, we are happy to report that we saw three convictions, which is significant because we have had a number of years where there were no convictions. So I think we are seeing that. I would love it to be faster, truth be told, but it is a start. We are also seeing restitution being given to persons who have been involved in those cases, which is a good thing for people who have experienced trafficking, where their all their rights and their life, I would say, would have been snatched from them. And the new law says that restitution is a must. It's not at anybody's discretion. And there are many other provisions in the new law, which was unanimously supported when presented in Parliament by me, and of course, with presentations by my distinguished cabinet colleagues. This new law gives a lot of teeth to our response going forward to counter trafficking in persons. And just to give you a sense of what would have been happening, we would have had 278 from our end, not all the statistics, 278 alleged victims of trafficking. What people tend to do for the first half of the year, what people tend to do is mix up trafficking with refugees, with migration. So it gets, the lines get a little blurred. But speaking specifically to migrants, we have as a government been responding very, very, I would say, humanitarian service type of way, in that we don't discriminate when it comes to services being offered. We include those persons in our education system regionally, healthcare system regionally. This ministry will provide the same services to those persons. So while we are also dealing with our Guyanese population's needs, we are also never ignoring the needs of the migrant population. There is actually provision in Region 1 where they have land to farm and that kind of thing. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this is not a problem that, or an issue, I shouldn't say a problem. This is not an issue that is a small issue or an easy issue to deal with. Countries across the globe have been dealing with these issues in various ways, and I think Guyana is moving in the right direction in the way in which it's dealing with it.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think your response is very comprehensive, and I'm happy that there is, results and convictions, as you mentioned. You know, we are all accustomed of the historical ministry of citizenship that bought birth certificates, so that didn't help your cause. But I'm pretty sure you are on top of it. I know your ministry and the government engage in providing persons living with disability public support and assistance. Can you provide us some context into that area of support and what has been done since you took office?
So the Ministry of Health would have dealt with disability in large measure before this ministry took a lot of effort to bring visibility to the issue of people living with disabilities and to provide services. The legislation provides for three ministries: health, education, and human services. Under the Ministry of Human Services, we have done significant work because I would say very humbly, many things were not easily accessed by persons living with disability. We have an assistive and support aids program where people just have to request anything from a wheelchair to a walker to crutches to white canes to anything, and that's all. And we can provide it. We take this service into communities in that sometimes people don't even have to come to the ministry, we go out. So that has been happening. We have had a number of persons receiving assistive aids. Over close to six, 700 people would have gotten assistive aids from this ministry since the program started. We also heavily focused on ensuring that persons living with disability had equal access to other programs that existed. Recently, you would have seen me open a center called the Learning Lab. That center is specifically geared to technical vocational, free technical vocational training for persons living with disabilities. And this would have ranged from anything from garment construction to social media marketing to graphic design to IT. Now, this did not wait on the opening of that lab. This kind of training would have started from 2021 to now. And we are looking at targeting about 1,000 persons to start off with who live with disabilities and who would like to have the opportunity for entrepreneurship or employment. I've had engagements with GCCI, Private Sector Commission, my colleagues in cabinet to ensure that we advance this thing where persons with disability have opportunities for employment. So that is an ongoing work. We have done a series of PSAs to educate the public, down to having a child who is a national chess champion who's deaf and follow her for days, see what it's like for her to go to a restaurant or take public transportation. How does she maneuver? We've also done things like doing booklets for the Deaf Association of Guyana. We work with the National Commission on Disability, and for the first time, Guyana has a full database of children living with disability. We never had that. So this is now putting us in a very good stead to work on programs specific to those children. We had a catchment from the president's announcement of a one-off $100,000 cash grant to every child living with a permanent disability. I want to make sure I put that word in there. So they had to establish it with a medical report, and 8,000 applications were received. Out of that, those children received the grant. We were able to see 5,000 of them on the database validated, and we are working because the remaining have many other issues, educational issues, learning problems, mental health problems. So there are lots of things, and we do have the diagnostic facilities available. So there's going to be partnership among the Ministry of Education, Health, and this ministry as we go forward to ensure that we do more work with our children. Now, you're probably saying, well, we're training all these people, we're working with them, but there's a revolving fund that has been set up for persons living with disabilities. This is a first. So we're encouraging them to go into business. This is administered by the Small Business Bureau because they have the mechanism, but the allotment comes through the Ministry of Human Services. What I also want to say is for the first time in Guyana, significant budgetary allotments would have been done towards people living with disabilities under the Ministry of Human Services. In 2020, 2023, we have had 100 million at least allotted for training and for support and assistive aids. And we continue to work with persons with disabilities, and we provide many other services. We started a Pampers Bank. And I did that because the difficult services unit that we have in the ministry focuses on people coming to us with whatever their requirements are. And I noticed that was a very expensive commodity. So we make 3 months of that affordable for persons living with disability because we provide it at no cost to them. We also look at any other way that we can help. Sometimes they may need a door to their house. Sometimes they may need washroom fittings, whatever it is, and however we can help, we do it. Now, the big program in the government in the governmental sense, which is our social assistance program, focuses directly on persons living with disability. We would have increased the amount giving to persons with disabilities, and it will be an incremental increase as every year goes on. And, we are conscious too that sometimes persons with disabilities have no other source of income. And we are looking at that also. I am in the process of setting up a unit specific to persons living with disabilities so that their needs could be catered for in that sensitive and specific way.
Thank you so much for your comprehensive answer. I'm pretty sure the ministry is in good hands with your many initiatives that is taking, a visible presence across our country. So thank you for your hard work.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Minister, I want to touch back on the question of poverty. I'm using the United States not as an example, but you can draw some lessons there. United States, despite being the richest country in the world and has been in existence for centuries, they haven't been able to deal to eliminate poverty. The poverty level is 11.5% as of last week, still 11.5%. But the crucial thing is the network where they have social security. In Ghana, we have NIS and old age pension. But the social security here was the greatest factor in the alleviation of poverty. It lifted 29 million Americans out of poverty last year. Now, is the government thinking of combining social security, old age pension, and NIS in a framework like that? Because the American experience teaches that that's the best way to eliminate or reduce poverty. So I don't know if any thought has gone into that.
I think there will be discussions going forward on many newer models, and we will always benefit from countries' experiences, their successful strategies, and how that would relate to our stage in development. And the government has been very heavily invested in terms of providing various modes of addressing poverty reduction and various avenues and streams of ensuring that people are able to move away from necessary assistance at this point in time. Because, as I would have mentioned, we are moving to having people not stay on assistance programs for a lifetime, but to move them off of it by getting them into jobs, by ensuring they have more disposable income, by ensuring that they're able to provide by their family, by making the basic food basket affordable, by ensuring that people also do personal agriculture and that kind of thing. Speaking of NIS and old age pension, they're two very different systems. At any one point in time, people could be accessing three types of pension in Guyana. The old age pension is a not means tested pension. So there's no means test attached to it. You hit 65, you get an old age pension. The NIS pension is a contributory type of pension. So it is based on your employment contributions. And both of those focus more towards people who are in both cases 60 and over. So that's a different population. So I think government will be looking at all of these models that have existed for a long time. They will also be looking at legislation also to see how, when you look at models, how legislation has to be amended to reflect these new models, and also looking at how the country's economic framework is geared towards encompassing those within the fiscal space as well.
Thank you. Another question that I don't know if it's a fair question to ask you, but many of these new buildings that are being put up, do they cater for possibly for handicapped people, or there's no
It's
provision
okay.
for
It's
that?
not an unfair question. It's not an unfair question. Actually, what we're doing is the Ministry of Labor used to be aligned with the Ministry of Human Services. We've since split amicably, and the Minister of Labor has had a program where all new buildings must be equipped with access for persons living with disabilities. He's also been doing occupational safety and health programs, and we're looking at even the existing buildings being compliant with that. So it's definitely not an unfair question. And I think it is
Mm,
important because if we're speaking of equal access, that is one area of equal access for persons living
mm,
with disability. I will also say to you, one of the things that we ensured when we started our program training persons living with disability, that there was transportation. So we have two buses. I'm looking forward to having many more, but we have two buses that pick them up and take them to and from their
mm,
training. The president has given a commitment for more buses for children who go to school and are requiring, those buses that are equipped for persons living, children in particular, living with disability. So everything is happening, but maybe it's not enough in
mm.
terms of the visibility in the media, but some of those things are happening.
The, well, it's great because I'm particularly pleased with handicapped people who are physically and mentally challenged. They have been neglected for years, and it's great that you have taken the initiative to recognize that they're normal human beings, and I'm happy that the government is walking on that track. Um,
Yes.
would it be possible? I'm very much interested in the various training programs that you're doing. Can I
Mhm.
get some data from that? Not now. If
So,
I can,
what I would suggest, we have the Human Services Quarterly, and that's a digital newsletter. We will
it's
definitely be
published.
happy. We haven't printed it, but it's published. It's on our Facebook page, and we are working on a website. So we'll have that up
Mm,
there pretty soon. But we have a mailing list. Anybody who would like to be added to our mailing list can have the quarterly reports of everything we do in the ministry because we
okay.
do outreaches, we go to far flung communities, and all the services
Mm,
that I mentioned are taken to those communities. We have
mm,
been, for example, even pension. Pension used to be a post office thing. Now pension is
mm,
paid every day of the month. If you want to go to alternate venues like Western Union, MoneyGram, you can also go to the post office if you want. That's one of the things I must admit was very close to my own heart. I never like to see the seniors lining up and being like that for their pension. So we put that in very early. We put in the direct bank deposit so
mm,
people can get their money in the bank. They don't have to line up at all in the first 5 days in the month. They can access it through MMG. And we also do what we call direct delivery, where we take the pension monies to the remote communities and villages. So now people don't have to spend an exorbitant amount of money. We are perfecting that system and we are working on it to make sure that it happens. So what we
mm,
will be working towards, and it's because you asked me too about persons living with disabilities, we want to mirror what we're doing with pension for those persons living with disabilities,
mm.
because we also have a shut-in system where we take the pension to the people who cannot come out of their homes once they apply for that service as well.
Thank you, Shamiza. I know our time is up, Shamiza.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Thank you to the panel. Um, we do have a few questions from our viewers, so I'll go ahead and ask. Elisa Yakub is asking, when someone applied for permanent public assistance, how long do they have to wait to start getting their assistance?
Ideally, I would like them to get it within the very month. What we have seen is an increase in the sheer volume of people who are asking for public assistance. From 16,000 in 2020, we are now at close to 23 plus thousand persons who are accessing public assistance. What we have had to deal with was the same number, even less members of staff to cater for that. So we have been trying to put systems in place, the Miss Unit, where the information is processed and the books are printed. We are trying to increase the numbers of people who can do that. But ideally, I would love to get it down. This is something I'm working hard towards. Get it down to at least within 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, because what has changed for people living with permanent disability compared to years before, they would have to keep reapplying, which meant that processing would have to keep happening more than once in a year, which meant that they would have to wait a very long time. What we have done is change the policy. So once someone applies for their permanent disability, that policy was changed last year. They apply only once. So they're on a standard database that is will then transition to the pension. So this will reduce the time it takes for them to get to their book. But oftentimes, many people think I am the person who deals with the assistance directly. No, the law provides for a structure. An application is presented. That application goes to the local board of guardians, which meets once a month by law. If a person is approved, then that book comes back centrally and is printed and given back to the individual through the regional system. If a person is rejected, then that person is entitled to have their case taken to the Poor Law Commission. They may approve or reject it. If approved, the same process has to happen. So you will appreciate that if the board is meeting once a month, it will take at least 3 weeks to 1 month to get the book. And I know many people sometimes get very frustrated. We have started a hotline to deal with it, 623-4710, to make sure that people are able to benefit from what we're offering.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And the next question is from Lynn Aladdin. Good evening, all, and to our beautiful Honorable Minister. My question is, do we have a program for support workers to do home visits to the elders to, I'm guessing, bathe and clean, or at least 1 hour per day, also for male support worker to bathe male elders and mental health person?
All right. So that is something I'm very glad you asked this. This is something I would like to see happen. We've trained a significant number of persons across the country in elder care. We're trying to have a collaboration with the Ministry of Health. The of Health has a home based care program specific to the elderly and health care, where it happens in some parts of the country. I know they would want to expand that, and we are hoping to collaborate with them to have exactly what you were asking for. But we would have had to train people to be able to provide this service across the country, and I'm hopeful that we can do exactly this because it's so needed in our country.
Agreed. Rajendra Singh is asking if there is a way someone can apply for a lump sum NIS payment, and if their contributions don't reach the minimum contribution required from monthly benefits.
So NIS falls under the Ministry of Finance, and this ministry has a help desk to cater for all the issues that are related to NIS, and they have various ways in which people can access their NIS if there is a shortage of a number of contributions. There's a formula that is used to calculate the remaining contributions that people can pay and have whatever they are entitled to and that kind of thing. But I think it would be good to check with the Ministry of Finance in the particular case that the person is requesting.
Um, and then, I mean, this is, I guess it's just a general statement. Lisa Yakub says that she has a relative who is blind. He applied for public assistance since 16th of March of this year, and he cannot get any assistance. I'm begging your minister to please look into this matter.
So I would like to ask the person just send the name, the address, and a contact number to 623-4710. That's a hotline directly to me, and we will address the case. There are people who fall through the cracks. I'm not going to sit here and say that does not happen, but we try once we get the information to, as quickly as possible, redress the situation. Because while those things do not come to me directly, we will make the calls and find out where that process is in a bottleneck, and we try to help the person once that book has been, or once that application has been approved by the local board of guardians. So I will endeavor to do that. Just take the number again for anybody who's listening with anything to do with this ministry: 623-4710.
Perfect. And Dr. Fendi, if you can send me that number, I'll share it because I know others were asking on when you were
Sure.
speaking earlier if we can share the numbers that are available, domestic abuse number as well, if there is one, so that we can have it available to everyone. With that said, it was truly a pleasure having you this evening. The information you shared was very valuable to many of us. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panel, uh, Professor Hariraj, Professor Buru, Dr. Tara, thank you so much. And to you, Minister, keep up the good work that you're doing. We're all very proud of you and your ministry. And I know you have a tough job, but it's a job that someone has to do, and you do it beautifully. So thank you. Thank you to all our viewers for joining us this evening. Until next time, this is the Guyana Dialogue, and I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much to all of you and to
Thank you,
everyone.
Minister.
And Amazon Warriors, right? Take care.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, of course.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they have a